When do you give up on an author? After one book, two, or in the middle of a book? Let's talk about it. G'day to all you lovely people and welcome back to my channel. I'm Kathy and today I want to talk about when do we give up on an author? What factors lead us to decide that an author isn't for us? Because I think it will vary between people as to when they give up on an author, let alone why they give up on an author. But this is a subject that I raised briefly in a previous video, and I thought it would make an interesting topic because I'm very curious to hear what reasons people have for saying, no, I don't like this author and I'm not going to continue reading them. And I'm not talking about authors that we haven't tried because that is an entirely different question. I'm talking about authors that we have tried, whether it is a chapter or two, half a book, a whole book, 10 books, 2 books, doesn't matter. And what is it that's made us decide, no, this author isn't for me? Because I think if we've tried this author, then something about that book interested us. Whatever it is, whether it's the fact that the book is on a topic that we like or a genre that we like, whether it is that this author is very popular, so we wanted to try them, see whether we would like them, or whether it was available and you picked it up and thought, well, this one doesn't sound too bad, I'll give it a go. There might be myriad reasons why we decide to try an author, but I'm more curious about why we give up on them. And before I get into the reasons why we may give up on an author, I'm curious also as to when we give up on an author. Are you the type who does DNF books? Because I generally don't. Very rare for me to DNF a book. And for those who aren't sure, DNF means did not finish. In other words, have no intention of ever finishing a book because you decided it's not for you. I rarely do it. I'm trying to be a bit better about doing it because I feel sometimes I waste my time reading a book that I'm not enjoying. But I also have always felt that it is unfair to judge an author if I have not read at least one book by them. Yeah, generally. That doesn't mean I always do. I don't always write off an author just because I've DNF'd a book or because I didn't like one particular book, though sometimes I do. And I don't know why that is, unless it is that I absolutely hated this book, because that will generally put you off an author. So how long does it take you before you give up on an author? Does it take you one book? Do you DNF a book and decide this author isn't for you? Do you take several books before you decide an author isn't for you? Because speaking for myself, I generally don't like giving up on an author after just one book. I personally like to give authors more than one go, which means I'd like to finish at least one book and try a second. I don't necessarily have to finish the second book, but I'd like to at least start it and see if I enjoyed that book more than I did the first one. Some authors, however, I can decide within a book that they are not for me. For whatever reason it is, whether it's I don't like the writing style, I don't like the language used, I don't like devices they use, or I really dislike many things about the book, or basically I hated it so much that I can't bear to read anything else by that author, because that happens too. You can take an intense dislike for a book which spills over onto the author. But most of the time, I believe it takes me several books before I decide an author isn't for me. Yeah, I like to be fair. For me, it seems fairer to give the author several tries before I decide they are not for me. And that is the general rule. Of course, there are exceptions. There are exceptions where one book is enough and I think, yeah, no, I don't think I want to read anything else. Sometimes it is in the middle of the first book. And sometimes it's only after 2 books I decide to give up on an author. That's my kind of time frame as to when. As to why, there are a million reasons why that could be. I still don't know if I've figured out all of them, but I have figured out some of them. And I'm, of course, going to ask you guys to tell me what your reasons are, whether you can relate to my reasons as well. Sometimes I give up on an author, say because I really dislike the writing. Whatever it is, whether it uses very pedantic language, whether it is written very poorly, whether there's YA language in it, and I'm reading an adult book because that doesn't appeal to me. Things that I personally dislike in a book. If I find it, it can put me off enough that I may not even finish that book or will decide that author is not for me. That is one reason. A second reason is that I simply hated it. And if you've watched my channel, you know which book I'm going to talk about. That is The Guest List by Lucy Foley. That is probably the book I have hated the most in decades. I despised it so much that I knew halfway through that I will never read anything else by her. And in fact, I didn't even finish the book. I skimmed the last bit just to find out how it ended because I couldn't bear to read it. Yeah, there were so many factors for me that led to that decision, but part of it was that I just didn't like the book. I didn't like the writing style. I didn't like how she presented her story. I really disliked that it was touted as a mystery when it wasn't. I do not like books that mislead you in their blurbs, and then you read it and you realize it has got nothing to do with the blurb at all. That really puts me off a book, I will admit. I can decide in a fit, well, if you're not going to tell me what it really is about, you misleading me, I'm sorry, but I'm not going to bother to read you either. That's happened. That has happened to me. It's like, those film trailers you see that show you a clip supposedly from the film and it completely misrepresents the film. That's how I feel about books that do that. That their blurbs don't match the story. It should match. When I go into a book with certain expectations because I've been told what to expect, then I think I'm entitled to get annoyed that they haven't delivered what they promised. I don't think that's unreasonable. So yes, hatred of a particular book can lead me to decide that I don't want to try anything else by this particular author. But it has to be a really intense reaction, I think. There are books sometimes that you may hate, but you haven't hated them because it was poorly written. You perhaps didn't like how the book ended, or you hated because certain character got away with something, whatever the reason is. That's a different kind of reaction. That is more being annoyed with the storyline itself or the plot rather than, say, the writing or the lack of a plot. And I think disliking the writing itself can much more easily lead you to decide, I don't want to read anything else by this author because I don't like their writing. However, the issue sometimes is that, there are new authors who are still learning their craft, which is why I generally like to give an author more than one go. I'm willing to try, say, a second or third book to see if they've improved their writing over time. It's different, however, when you read a book that isn't the author's first and you dislike it intensely. Then I think you can tell, well, if I don't like it now, I doubt I would have liked it when they first started, and I doubt I will like it in the future. But with a new author, or when you're reading the first book that they've ever written, and you might not like the writing because, I don't know, there could be many reasons. But for example, Joe Abercrombie, I could see a lot of potential in his writing, but there were some parts of his writing that were so amateurish, even immature, that it actually put me off. I thought it reads like somebody very young wrote this, who wasn't an experienced writer and who needed an editor to clean up some of his writing. I wasn't impressed at all, though the fact that I could see potential in his writing has made me want to read more of his books. So here's one I actually didn't give up on. And basically it wasn't because of the story or Glocker, who is a great character in his first book, The Blade itself. I really like the character, but I don't love the others. That isn't why I'm willing to give this author another go. It's because I feel it's only his first book. I can see potential. The potential in his writing is what has made me want to read another book, though I haven't got around to it yet. And I think if you don't see something like potential in a book and you don't like the writing, it can very easily go in the other direction where you'll decide, no, I'm giving up on this author. And I can see why some people would give up on him after the first book anyway. I had a similar reaction to Brandon Sanderson's Mistborn series. I only read the first book, The Final Empire. However, I have also read 3 other books that he wrote for The Wheel of Time, which I really liked. I thought he did an excellent job in capturing Jordan's writing style. Whereas when I read The Final Empire, which is his standalone book, I did not like his writing style. There was too much exposition. There were a lot of issues that I had with his writing. And I think if that had been the only book that I had read, it probably would have been the last. I did not like it, and I was not intrigued enough to continue. And I thought, this isn't the kind of fantasy that I enjoy. But because I have read his Wheel of Time books, I'm willing to give him another go and to try another series. Perhaps one that he has written more recently will appeal to me more than The Final Empire, which was one of his very early books. I'm hoping his writing has improved. So potential can lead me to not give up on an author, and conversely, lack of potential can make me give up on an author. And another reason I can give up on an author, and this does me no credit, though I have to point out it is contradictory in nature. I can give up on an author because they are too popular. As I said, it does me no credit to admit this, but I'm trying to be honest here. I am sometimes contrary. I can stay away from a series or an author because they are too popular. I start getting very suspicious. I don't know why, but I think, no, too many people like them. I don't think I'm going to like them. But conversely, an author's popularity can also lead me to reading them. I think so many people can't be wrong. I must try this author and decide for myself. I would like to think that I am objective enough not to be swayed by public opinion and to just decide whether the book is for me or not, though I can't rule it out entirely. So I don't know if sometimes I can be put off by an author's popularity. I think perhaps sometimes I can, yeah. But that generally is when I won't read them, not when I've actually decided to try them. When I decide to try an author, I don't go into it prepared to hate it. I'm hoping to like it. I have no interest in reading a book that I'm going to hate. Frankly, there are just too many books out there that I want to read and I never will get time to read, that I'm not willing to waste my time on books that I believe I will hate. You generally become good at gauging which books you think you will like and which you think you won't. But sometimes you can't know until you try an author. There is an author, Sarah J. Maas. Everyone talks about her. She's everywhere on Book YouTube. I have owned one of her books for at least, I'd say 7-8 years now, which one of the shop assistants convinced me to buy. At the time, I didn't realize it was YA, so of course I haven't touched it. However, I actually do want to try her. I don't want to just rule her out because she's way too popular in that genre. I think I need to judge for myself. So whilst an author's popularity may lead me to eventually reading an author, it is not enough to convince me to continue with one, nor is it a reason for me to give up on them. Really, we need to judge books based on their merits, based on the writing, on what we're reading, not based on what other people say about a particular book. It should be our own assessment. Though, of course, we are going to be influenced by other people's opinions, but we have to try to put that aside when we're reading something. That's what I think. There have been a couple like Abercrombie or Sanderson who I'm both willing to give another go. Their popularity has not worked against them for me. But then I have other authors like Lucy Foley, who is popular. They can keep them. I will never read another book of hers. And I even own a second one, but I hated the first one so much that I have zero interest in reading her. But at least I give them a go. At least I read one. It's very rare, as I said, for me to not finish a book. I really pushed my way through The Final Empire because I was expecting it to get better because it was so popular. And I was disappointed in the end and decided, no, I don't want to read anymore in this series. Other reasons why I may give up on an author are that I really don't like their writing, or I don't see any improvement in their writing, or I find that their books are repetitive. That can put me off an author enough that I don't want to read anymore. And another reason is that the writer does not engage me enough, in that doesn't engage my interest in the characters. I am a person who loves characters in books. If I cannot find a character I can relate to or fall in love with, I don't even have to relate to them, then I am less likely to want to continue reading. I have to love the characters. I have to want to know more about them. I have to want to return in the next book, for me to want to read more by a particular author. And I'm not even talking about the same characters. Like, you can have one-off books where the author has skill enough to draw really memorable characters that'll make you want to read another book by them, even if it has completely different or new characters. But you have to make characters that I feel are realistic and possibly people that I would like. And that isn't always something an author can do. It's not their fault. They may just write characters that personally I don't like. Doesn't mean they're badly drawn, just not to my taste. Especially if it's a series where you have the same characters. If I'm not attached to them, then I have no real incentive to continue reading it. One of these series is the Rivers of London series by Ben Aaronovitch. I read 3 of them. I kept hoping I will fall in love with the character or I will fall in love with the writing, and I didn't. I could really either take or leave the character. I was not overly impressed in the world he created. I certainly didn't like the police procedural aspect of his books. And by the 3rd one, it was such a struggle to finish that I thought, yeah, unfortunately, this series isn't for me. Now, I will confess, a part of me, a very small part of me, is curious about where that series will go, because I read 3, but not enough to want to continue it. And I just think his writing isn't for me. He did not grab me and keep me engaged or interested enough. And that is what I expect in a book, or a series in particular. I expect to be so hooked on the characters particularly that I can't bear not to read about them. I just need to know what's going to happen to them. There's one other thing I need to raise, is that an author's bad behavior outside of the writing in their normal lives is not enough for me personally to give up on an author. I think I'm the type who can separate the art from the artist. A lot of people can't, and that is fine, but their bad behavior is not going to be a reason for me to give up on an author. And let me be clear that that is just my choice. I am not judging anyone who decides that an author isn't for them because they cannot tolerate their behavior. That is a decision each individual has to make, I think. In summary, I think there could be many reasons why we give up on an author. And I think it will vary for each person as to what those reasons are. But what I wanted to stress that it doesn't matter why you decide to give up on an author. You do not have to justify it to anyone. Whatever reasons we have for giving up on them is our own. There should not be any judgment as to why we give up on an author. As far as I'm concerned, not every book is for every person. That's why we have so many different genres. And there are so many books out there that I will never get to read because I just will not live that long, that I don't want to waste time reading books that I'm not enjoying. And ultimately, I think when you give up on an author, generally, it's because you're not enjoying their writing. Generally. Well, for me anyway. Well, that is all I can think of as to reasons why I give up on authors. Now, of course, I really want to hear what your reasons are for giving up on an author. And when do you do it? Do you do it in the middle of a book? Do you do it after several books? Do you get tired of an author's writing after, say, 10 books and decide, no, I've had enough because they're too repetitive? Because I know that can happen as well. And you can let me know down in the comments or you can contact me on Instagram. I think it's going to be really interesting what factors lead to us deciding not to read an author anymore or to give up on a particular author. Well, I hope you enjoyed this video. I think I rambled a lot, so I hope I made some sense. And if you did enjoy it, then you can do the usual. You can like, comment and subscribe if you haven't already, as it helps my channel to grow. I hope you all have a beautiful day and I will see you next time. Bye! When do you give you... Okay, because I think it will vary according... Start again! Oh my God, I can't talk today. This may not be the day to do this. It really may not. This is a mess.